Have you heard about Anchor? Well, it's one of the easiest ways to create a podcast. Not only is it 100% free, but it has a variety of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or a computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast to other sites such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others for you. And Anchor even allows you to make money from your podcast without a required minimum listenership. So whether you've been in the podcasting game for a long time or you're completely new to it, Anchor is so user-friendly that it's basically your one-stop shop for making a podcast. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
You're listening to First Fossil. Because sometimes you simply need someone to help you take that first fossil. Hello and welcome to First Fossil, a show where we learn together how to take that first fossil toward becoming the best versions of ourselves. My name is Candice Olushola, and today's special guest is a fellow pharmacist, but he's more than a pharmacist. He is a physician as well, and he has his master's in business administration. He's also a podcaster who I came across through the pharmacy world on LinkedIn, and I've been really intrigued with a lot of the things that he shares on his podcast, and I'm sure he's going to talk a lot about that today. But I want to introduce you guys to this brilliant man. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Richard Harris. How are you doing, Dr. Harris?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on to the First Paso show and talk about my life and my passion, and that's holistic medicine and true healing. So thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple of questions before we actually really introduce you, but I think my biggest question is, how did you decide pharmacy and then medical school and then an MBA? Like, what was that something you'd always thought of doing? Because I had a couple classmates who started off in pharmacy school with me that were like, I'm going to be a medical doctor. And I was like, you're in the wrong building. It's over there. And, but they love it and they wanted to do both. So how did you decide to do that?
Well, so there's the right answer and there's a wrong answer when people ask me this. The right answer is that I had no clue. This was not planned. The wrong answer was like, oh yeah, this is what I knew I wanted to do from the beginning. But what I say when people ask me this question is there's the only way that I could have done this is from God. That was it. Because there's no way that a person would ever dream of taking this path. PharmD, MD, MBA.
Yeah.
It's a lot of school. I spent most of my adult life in school.
Wow.
But it started back when I was a kid. When I grew up, people were reading books about Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew.
Yes.
And Goosebumps.
Yes.
I was at the library reading about whales, dolphins, sharks, so I knew from an early age that I was really interested in science.
Yeah.
And it was my senior year. I was going to college, and I said, okay, I need to explore what I want to do more. So I took a physics class because I was really interested in physics, and I took an anatomy class. And at the end of that, I decided that I wanted to do biomedical physics. I wanted to make prosthetics to help people.
Oh, that's
Got
cool.
to college my first year, did physics, loved physics, hated math. My first differential equations class, where it's so high level theory, and I was like, there's no real practical application to this, I'm out. And I switched into biochem, worked in the dean of pharmacy's lab, and that's how I ended up in pharmacy school. My first year of pharmacy school, I realized I wanted to go to medical school, but I was 21, I was in Austin, I was having the time of my life, and I absolutely loved physiology. Physiology is still my favorite subject, and I learned a lot of physiology in pharmacy school.
Yeah.
And so that prepared me very well for medical school. And then when I got out of medical school, got into residency and a job, I realized that I didn't know anything about business. And now I'm involved with the business of medicine. And I'm the type of person that I hate knowledge deficits. So me
Mm.
feeling like I didn't know anything about business really didn't sit well with me. And I'm the kind of person that I want to structure learn before I unstructured learn. So I said, let me go see what I don't know. Let me learn what I don't know first, and business school is going to teach me that. And then after business school, I know the real education will come when I get out there and get into my own things. So the whole journey, it kind of just evolved as it went along. I did not plan this whatsoever. And that's why I say it could only be from God. And each step added another rung on the ladder to get me to ultimately where I wanted to be.
That is amazing. I also giggled a bit when you said I hated math, and then you said I went to pharmacy school, and I was like, but pharmacy school is applied math, so it's different from being like a math major, or taking some of those really high level math courses, which actually that was the thing about pharmacy school that threw me off. I think I knew it was going to be applied math, but I was so used to being in those high level math courses, and I really loved them. I took calculus several times for fun, not really for the grade. And so when I had to do applied math, I was like, oh, okay, whoa, hey, I don't know about this. We're going to talk about this applied math stuff, but still really fascinating. I love that mindset that you have, that, if I don't know it, I'm going to go learn it. And I think that definitely is serving you well now, and it's going to continue serving you well. I feel like we're going to hear more about you in the future. So that's really cool that you've decided to do that, and that God kind of guided you through that. So kind of already shared a little bit about yourself, but on a more personal level, why don't you delve into a little bit about yourself and who you are and what makes you tick?
Sure. So, first and foremost, of course, I'm a child of God, and that's where most of my motivation and my heart lies. And then because of that, everything that I try to do now is to one, be a good steward of everything that I've been given, right? Use those spiritual gifts and really try to help people. I've always been someone who's been more concerned about the well-being and the safety of others compared to myself. I never really cared about myself in that weird sense, as I would much rather see someone else happy, and that makes me happy, than put myself first, right? Because that doesn't really bring me joy. But if I know I made an impact in someone's life, that brings me joy. The best feeling I can get and or I've ever gotten is when someone comes up to me and thanks me for saving their life. That's a really cool, unique feeling, and that's something that medicine allows me to do. But it's more than just that. Like today, I got a text from one of my clients, and they're like, "Oh my God, I feel amazing. I felt better than I've felt in years. Thank you so much for showing me the way." And they like dove so deep into holistic health now and trying to get their life together. And I know that that's not only going to impact this one person, it's going to bleed out into their family, right? So now their family is going to see they're doing this and be like, hey, what are you doing? How did you do this? That person's going to go and educate their family. And then, this person's young, they're in their 20s. So now they have all this knowledge. Well, when they get married and if they decide to have kids, that's more people that this one person has impacted. And then their friends are going to see it too. And they're going to be like, hey, what are you doing? Can you teach me? Like, show me the way. Where did you learn this from? And so it's that spider web of impact that's really what gets me out of bed in the morning. And, part of that is because of the dark times that we live in as far as health in this country.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize that we are an extremely sick, unhealthy country, and most of it is preventable. 80% of heart disease is preventable. 90% of type 2 diabetes is preventable. 40% of cancer diagnoses and 45% of cancer deaths are preventable. 90% of lung disease is preventable. And you look at what are the most common causes of death in this country: cancer, heart disease, lung disease.
Yeah.
Right, so and all three of these are in the top 5 causes of death, and most of it is preventable. And I was talking to a colleague the other day because I still work in allopathic medicine. I'm not of those people who's completely naturopathic. I'm not completely allopathic. I work in both. So I still work in the hospital a couple times a month because I still want to know what's going on in conventional medicine, even though that's not where my heart lies.
Yeah.
And I was talking to an ER doc, and because I was seeing a patient, and I was like, man, 10 years ago, did you ever see 30-year-olds with strokes? Did you ever see 30-year-olds with heart attacks? Did you ever see 30-year-olds on dialysis? And he was like, no, man, I can't remember seeing this 10 years ago. And I go, when I came out of pharmacy school, I never saw this. It was so rare. Now, every time I go to the hospital, I see one of them. I'm regularly seeing people, I'm 37 years old. I'm regularly seeing people younger than me with strokes.
Yeah.
Younger than me with heart attacks.
Yeah.
Younger than me on dialysis. And that is such a mind trip that I can't even explain, like the feeling and what it does to my mind, seeing these people who should have the best years of their life ahead of them now, in a lot of cases, have permanent disabilities. And if you think about the impact of that, how's that going to be for their kids? How's that going to be when their parents who are older have to take care of them? How's that going to be for that person's friends who no longer get to see that person as much, who can't do the things that they used to do with that person?
Yeah.
So you start to think about the bridges and the impact and the connections here, and it's just massive. And I really want to do something about that. And that's partially why I'm so focused on holistic medicine and true healing.
Wow. That, man, I am on the same train as you. And I can hear the passion from you in just wanting to. We always said in gospel choir when I was an undergrad, reach one. That was when you reach one, you do not usually get to see the ripple effect of what reaching one does. And if it's one person that gets to learn about nutrition and healthcare and teach that to someone that they know after they've gone through it themselves, I mean, it's God's pay it forward plan. You might not get to witness it, but people get to witness it and maybe not even realize that you were the first link to that chain that got it going in so many different directions. I love that spider web analogy you made of being able to make that type of impact. So that was really cool. I love to hear other, more the millennial aged people like myself know and understand and be passionate about nutrition and healthcare and have figured out a way to make those two worlds collide. Because I know that's not always the easiest thing to do in the medical world, but I think it's important. It's an important thing to talk about and to really consider and address. So, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about that background and your passion for holistic health. So, can you share something personal, maybe that for you it was a first basso or a first step moment for you, and why what that was so impactful? When did it happen? What did you do? How did it unfold? And how has that affected your life today?
And so there's two really pivotal moments that I look back at, and they determined my overall trajectory in my career. And to understand why I've done what I've done, you have to understand where I came from, because that definitely influenced my decisions and my path. So the first one was when I was 13 years old, and I just started to be able to play sports. I had terrible asthma as a kid, terrible allergies. I couldn't really be outside. I was on prednisone, so I was a chubby kid. And then after I got off the prednisone and we moved to Texas, my allergies just went away. And I was able to get outside and play with the other kids more and not be miserable and doped up on medication all the time. So I set a goal for myself that I wanted to make the basketball team. So I started practicing, playing with the neighborhood kids, watching basketball. And I wasn't really a basketball fan before. I don't remember how I got into basketball. I think maybe it was the neighborhood kids all played. And so I wanted to fit in. So I said, okay, let me see this. And I really liked it. And So I tried out for basketball in the 8th grade and didn't make it. And instead of getting sad, instead of getting down on myself, instead of beating myself up, saying I'm not good enough, I said, okay, what am I going to have to do to make this team? What should I do to fix this problem? And I said, okay, let me go play with the kids who are better than me. And so I found all the kids who were really good. I started playing with them. And I started seeing what they were doing, how they were practicing, the work that they were putting in, the moves that they were doing, how they played defense. I mean, I just started taking notes on everything. And so after a year of doing that, playing with the kids that were better than me, practicing harder and practicing smarter, because now I had a plan based upon what I've seen from the kids who were already where I wanted to be. So in the practice in the 9th grade, it was funny because 5 minutes into the practice, all the other kids came up to me, like one by one, and they're like, Richard, tone it down. You're making us all look bad. And so I made the team that next year, very easily, and ended up finishing, out the rest of my years playing varsity basketball and everything. But that was the first lesson that I learned. I said, okay, if I can't do something, I'm going to find someone better, stronger, smarter, whatever than me, and go work with them and pick their brain and figure out how they got where they got, and then see if they'll help me get there. So I was never afraid to ask for help, and I was never afraid to admit that there was something that I didn't have or that I needed, but I didn't get down about it. I would say, I'm not where I am, or I'm not where I want to be now, but I'll get there. I always added that but with a positive at the end of a negative. And so that really helped me and guided me in one of the guiding principles of my career. The second moment was I was, I think, a junior in college, and my dad lost his job. He worked for Compaq at the time. When they merged with HP, he got laid off, and he was out of work for 8 months because the job he was looking for afterwards was a promotion, but he didn't have the requirements that a lot of the companies were looking for. So he told me, he was like, Richard, you're in college, do what you need to do, but never be afraid to go get an extra certification or an extra degree or extra whatever, because you never know how it might help you. I didn't think this one thing I would need, 30 years ago, but if I had gotten it, I would have gotten a job a lot easier. So, he took that 9 months out of work really hard, and so I took that to mean, okay, always prepare yourself even for things that you don't know are coming in the future. So, there's no such thing as too much education. There's no such thing as too much preparation. There's no such thing as too much of an investment in yourself. And that's how I looked at it, as, okay, this pharmacy degree, that's an investment in myself. This medical degree, that's an investment in myself. This MD, this MBA is an investment in myself. And if you look at those two defining moments and you add them up together, that pretty well explains the career path I have, my mentality, and how I approach situations in my life.
Wow. Man, I wish I was that kid. I love that such a young age you were unashamed of your why, of asking the why and how and what else, like what more do I need to do. I know not everyone feels like that. And even in our adult lives, there's adults that are walking around that are afraid to ask those questions, and it holds a lot of people back. It holds a lot of us back from being stretched, being stretched to our maximum capacity of learning and growth and being broken down and built back up in a different way. And it's just fascinating to me that you had that at the age that you had that. Were you always that kid that just always saw that, or was it that not making the basketball team, was it that experience that was like, okay, well, hold up, let me reassess this. Or was that your norm, or was that new for you to have that mindset at that time?
I was always a pretty analytical kid. So, the reason I didn't get along with my parents was not because I didn't want to do what they would tell me to do, because I always wanted to know why. And it wasn't, I want to know why because I'm questioning you. I want to know why because I want to see inside your thought process. Like, why do you think this is important? Why do you think this is important for me? Like, let me see from your perspective so I can understand why I'm doing this. And so that was something that I was born with. I guess it's a little bit of a curiosity that I've always had,
Yeah.
and always wanting to know more about the laws of the universe and the rules around me. And like I said earlier, always seeking out people who were smarter than me. I knew my parents were smarter than me. I knew they had more knowledge, and I wanted to know what in their experiences or what in their background or what had they read or learned made them make that decision. Right? Because I wanted to know why they were making those decisions. And so if I ever got to that point or had a similar decision, I could draw upon that knowledge to make a decision.
Yeah.
So that was just something that, as far as I can remember, I've always been like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You sound exactly like my little brother. He's a very analytical mind as well, and he was always, I'm just trying to understand the process. He just wants to know the process. If you tell him the process, he's got it. If you don't tell him the process, he's not really sure where it's coming from. He doesn't know what to do with that. So I love that. I love the analytical mind, because man, we need analytical minds in this world to really get us those pathways of figuring out the processes of how things work and flow and why they connect. I see myself in that kind of. I was definitely the but why kid, but from the perspective of being analytical with people and relationship. So I constantly wanted to understand, like, why does this relationship work this way versus this one works completely different versus this one works this way, and why would you say this to this person this way but say the same thing this way to another person, and it works out the way you want it to? Like, what is that? Why did you think to say this? Why did you process it like that? And so I love that, from your perspective and what you do with medicine and nutrition and putting it together, the analytical side of, like, I want to make sure you know how your body works head to toe, and how food and your diet all come together in creating this well-oiled machine called your body function and move the way it does. And I'm more from the perspective of, that is all super important, and I want to understand the relationship piece of that, the creative side of that, the how do the things in your life affect how your well-oiled machine works, even with knowing the nutrition side and understanding the healthcare side. What are all the barriers? And that's why I ended up I'm in the middle of my master's in public health program. That's where I am. I love the prevention, but I also like to understand how the systems work and how the relationships with the systems affect your ability to get to the purely analytical side of holistic care. If you didn't have this issue, you didn't have that problem, it would be easier to get there. So what do I do to remove all those barriers so you can get to what I'm really trying to teach you, which is the the science behind why eating like this is more conducive to you actually healing instead of maintaining your disease state. I just think that's so fascinating. And then even your perspective of your dad's loss of his job. The fact that, kudos to your dad for taking that to be a teachable moment, even though it was difficult, to really be like, hey, look, if I had done this, then this should have better happened for me, as a way to teach you, don't repeat me. Don't repeat what I've done. in fact learn from it, and hopefully you won't end up in a situation like me because you saw this firsthand and you watched the process of how difficult that was. And so I see why that has taken you towards getting your 2 medical degrees, a business degree, and being a curious mind, because like you said earlier, it's an investment in yourself. And so I guess my biggest question then for you is, what would be your advice to, the 13-year-old kid who's trying to make the basketball team, or, they're trying to do a drama play and they've never done it before, or, the kid who's watched their parents go through a financial hit that's affected not just the parent but the whole family, and how they're trying to process where they are in their schooling, whether they're in high school or college or middle school, elementary school, trying to process seeing this, and how do I apply what I've witnessed or learned to my life? Like what advice do you give to those kids, and even to adults who are maybe we're already at the stage, we're millennials, we're figuring out life, maybe we haven't done all the necessary things before to try this and try that, and we made this mistake already, we made that mistake, we had this attitude of I'm a failure, I'm not going to be able to do this now. What do you say to people like that who are just trying to either figure it out or go to the next level after their own failure, or what could be seen as a failure to some people?
So this is the concept that is so important to me, because it's part of having that growth mindset where you're always looking at things like as an opportunity or as a learning lesson. So I do something every Monday called Wellness Journeys on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook group. And I just talk about something in my own life that I deal with and how I walk in wellness during that experience. And I did one, I think it was last week, on failure, and how I talked about how, to me, there's no such thing as a failure, right? Because everybody falls. It just depends on, do you get up? And to me, a failure is a choice to me. And let me explain what I mean by that. When I say failure is a choice, if you make a mistake, if you don't quote unquote succeed at something, and you learn nothing from that experience, you chose to learn nothing, then you actually did fail. But if you made a mistake, if you didn't quote unquote succeed at something, and you learned something from it, you took away a lesson, you took away something that you can apply, you help someone else maybe not make the same mistake that you did, then that is valuable. And information is valuable, learning is valuable. So therefore there was no failure, because you learned something. It's like Edison said when asked about the light bulb and all his failures at first. He said, I didn't fail, I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. But he learned something from each one, and then he took that and applied it. He learned something, took it and applied it, and he kept going, and he kept going, he kept going, he kept moving forward. So you fall 9 times, get up 10. Keep getting up, and keep learning from your situations. There have been plenty of times over the last couple of years of stuff where if I didn't have the right mindset, I would have been like, oh, I'm a failure in business, I'm a failure at this, I'm a failure at that. No, I learned from each one of those things. Some of them were my mistake, some of them were just life. You can do everything right, and life can sometimes smack you in the face. But then I say, okay, what can I learn from this? And instead of thinking about what I can't do, what can I do? And I'll use an example. Recently, I have an educational consulting company. We do social emotional learning, personal development, mindfulness for 6th through 12th graders. And we were making a lot of great progress in some of our programs here in Houston. And we had a lot of momentum. We had a lot of really great deals that we were working on pre-COVID. And then COVID happened. Well, guess what? We're in schools. So everything done, immediately done. And instead of focusing on, oh man, I don't know if we're going to survive, all this hard work, all these deals that we had, all this momentum, it's all gone. I said, what can I do? I can get online. I can get on LinkedIn. I can start connecting with people. So that's what I did. And then I said, okay, is there anything else I can do? Well, we haven't rolled out our online platform yet. Okay, let's find someone to help us with the online platform, and that's what I did. So there's so much that I couldn't do because of COVID, so much momentum that was lost, so many things that you could look at as a negative, but then I chose to focus on what I can do, what can we learn from the experience. Learn that we should have been more aggressive in getting our online platform available. Because if we had that, we probably would be up and running again right now. So, there's lessons that you can be learned in anything. It wasn't, a failure in my eyes. It was, we learned some lessons, we're going to apply them, and we're going to keep it moving.
I love that. That is literally the entire purpose of my podcast. That's why I called it First Bosso, because it's only, once we take that first step, we either fall or we keep going, or we go and we fall later and you get up again, you go in another direction, or you keep on the path. I mean, there are endless options to just taking your first step towards something, and the outcome, whether it's positive or negative, those are so many different learning opportunities that when you put them together, they build who you are. Like, that's what makes you you. And in all of those perspectives and situations, different encounters, regardless of whether they were amazing, whether you felt that they were helpful, you didn't think it was helpful, all of those collectively help build a different staircase or stair to where you're trying to go in this season of life. So I love that advice, and I definitely want to just echo that for those who are really just trying to figure things out, and man, it's like, this is not working. The next time might work. You've learned all this stuff of what didn't work or what isn't working. So, don't repeat what's not working. Try something different. Ask someone a question. I remember I was that kid that I'd ask questions for some things and I would not ask questions for other things, depending on how I felt about asking the question. And I wish I didn't do that, because I felt like I would have learned more, and I would have gained more knowledge and more opportunities had I just been fearless about just asking my questions, getting the answers, and not feeling like I was lesser than because of that. And so that's why I really commend you for having that ability to do that at such a young age. But for those of you, I don't care if you're 13, 18, 27, 36, 59, 103. Like, if you have a question, ask it. The worst thing that could happen is someone doesn't answer you, or they may want to make fun of you for asking it. Them making fun of you or not wanting to answer doesn't mean that it was a bad question. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have asked it. It just means that person is not providing you what you currently need. You find somewhere else. You look, read a book, watch a video, call a friend, call a pastor, call your neighbor, see someone in the grocery store, anyone. Like, if you have questions, ask them, because there's a world of opportunities. There's a world of growth. There's a world of learning. There's a world of just doors that can open in getting the questions that are building up inside of you out. Just get them out, and you'd be surprised where you will find some of your answers, how you'll find some of these answers, the connections you make in asking certain questions to certain people, and how that builds networks and friendships, provides opportunities. So please ask your questions and keep trying. You're not failing. Like Dr. Harris said, you're not failing. You're just learning ways that maybe didn't work, and now you get to re-strategize. That is your stretching phase. You get to stretch your mind, stretch your abilities, and grow. That's what we're designed to do. We're born to grow. until we die. And there's no stopping in that. And it's not just a physical growth. There's a mental growth. There's an emotional growth. There's a spiritual growth. There is a holistic growth that's going to continue happening until you take your last breath. So grow, enjoy the stretching, enjoy blossoming, enjoy the seasons of parts of you having to die to then have rebirth, and learning more in those different seasons. It's a beautiful process when you really look at it, the ability to really stretch yourself in that capacity and become a better you. So Dr. Harris, I want to thank you so much for coming and talking with me and sharing some of your stories with us from the personal perspective. And how can people either find you on social media or listen to your podcast? And you have a YouTube channel, so like, where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is the best way because it integrates all of the ghwellness.com. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Dr. Harris MD. That's Dr. Harris MD. And my podcast is called the Strive for Great Health podcast. It's available on any platform where you find your podcasts, including YouTube.
Nice. Awesome, guys. Go check him out. His material is really good, very eye-opening for all ages. If you're just curious more about, healthcare and nutrition, how they coincide, his podcast is really, really cool. So definitely check it out. And if you have questions for him, please reach out to him. He seems like one who loves to answer questions for people. He's one who loves to ask questions himself. So don't be afraid to ask your questions for him as well. And I want to thank all of you guys for listening today. If there are any topics that you want covered in the future, or any situations you want to talk about, anything you would like discussed on this podcast, send me a DM, post on Twitter, Facebook. You can tag me at First Basso on most of my platforms, unless it's Instagram and it's first_Basso. If you have a story that you want to relate to this podcast, anything you want to share, any comments, any questions, please let me know. I'll read some of those in future episodes and we can address them later. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, night, wherever you are listening to this. I hope you continue asking your questions and you step into your future selves and what that looks like and the path to getting there. If you guys really enjoy that. And Dr. Harris, thank you again. I hope you have a great journey with your podcast, all of your business endeavors, everything that you're doing. I just hope God continues to bless you and all of that. So super cool to have a colleague like you out there, really trying to teach people a more holistic side of healthcare. So I really appreciate your efforts and everything that you do right now. And you take care. You have a great night.
Thank you, you too. God bless everyone.